We're going to talk about enterprise AI, but before we get into the deck, I just want to note, if you didn't see it on the rotation here, if you open up the app for the conference and you find this session in your schedule, there's a Q&A option at the bottom of that. So at the end of the session, if you've logged any questions in that Q&A during the session, I'll have a iPad up here and I'll be able to answer those questions. If you don't have the app, or if you don't have a chance to enter that question, we'll also have microphones, and I did plan to leave some time for questions. Love to be able to talk with you guys, answer any questions you have after the presentation, or catch me up here afterwards, catch me in the hall. I'm also going to be sharing my email at the end, so you can catch me after the conference as well. So let's get started. All right, so yes, enterprise AI, right? Automating complex workflows with Appian. And just a real quick show of hands, like how many of you guys, I know there's a lot of local UK, but how many of you guys took a plane to get to the conference? Anybody? I did, I'm in the US. All right, so definitely a number of you guys. And when I talk about taking a plane, is this kind of what you guys are thinking of, right? Really nifty, actually, when I found this image, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I don't know how they did this. I'm not an expert at origami, so I was like looking at this, like engines are almost round. That's pretty interesting. Very nifty, kind of thing that I would want to dig into, maybe see how they did it. Very cool, but probably only goes about 10 feet if you throw it really, really hard. So when you're flying to a conference like this, you're probably thinking more of a plane like this one, right? Something that can travel thousands of kilometers without stopping, hundreds of kilometers an hour. And it's not gonna fall apart when it rains. So those are all really positive attributes of something that you wanna have running your operation, right? A global infrastructure. So if we look at these two different options, right, it reminds me of how kind of some of the things that I see in AI. I don't know if your feed is anything like my feed, right? You're constantly getting inundated with the latest AI innovation, latest AI startup, the latest AI toolkit, right? And it's all really cool. I love reading that stuff, right? I love seeing the nifty things and being able to check them out. But when I have to go somewhere, I'm gonna take Jumbo Jet, right? I'm gonna take the one that gets me there fast and safe and on time, mostly. So we want to talk about enterprise AI, right? Being able to actually put these things into real world situations, real world processes, real world automations. Now let's start by just talking about a really quick example, right? Something simple, email classification, right? Traditional machine learning, build a model, train it. Now, when you think about what am I looking for when I think about email classification, right? Probably the first thing that comes to mind is something really close to home, right? What training data is necessary? What's the training experience, right? How am I actually going to do that training? How accurate will it be when I train it? And how can I monitor, get updates on that accuracy, retrain it? All those things are really important. But if you only look at the local aspects of email classification, you're missing the greater requirement of what it takes to actually put that into production, right? And now we're talking about things like data security, right? Where'd you get the data from? Where are you using the data? Where is it going after you've trained it? How long is it being retained? All these types of things that you need to worry about when you're thinking data security. Or monitoring, right? Now when I'm actually out there using this email classification, how often am I using it? For which circumstances? How can I go back and make sure if I need to, I can audit that usage and determine what happened, when it happened, to whom? All of the monitoring tools that you need. What about integration, right? Because email classification by itself is not doing much, right? You need to bring that into a process. You need to make it part of an overall application, an overall process, in order for it to deliver actual value. How easy is it to integrate into that process? Do you have to worry about API keys and maybe work with multiple teams doing orchestration on deployment timelines and all of that complexity, or is it as simple as drag and drop? Data privacy, right? Not only is your data secure at the macro level, but is it secure at the row level? Right? Can the right people see the right data? Can they get access to the training information that you used? All of these different aspects that you want to make sure your data is both secure and private. How about making sure that it's actually available, right? Making sure that it can actually scale. Making sure that that prototype that you built can scale up to the production demand that you need. Or compliance, right? Obviously with AI, there's tons of compliance. Matt talked about it. We'll talk about it more here, but there's so many evolving compliance regulations, everything that you need to know, both about your application overall, but also about AI specifically. So making sure that compliance is one of those elements that you're considering is also extremely important. So now we've seen how we've gone from that core of email classification to everything that you need to be considering as you're actually fielding AI, as you're actually putting it into an application and getting it out to your users. So that's what we mean when we talk about the totality of enterprise AI, right? It's AI not just at the toy level, it's not the little origami plane, it's the actual jumbo jet, right? The one that's really gonna get you there. Now, why is all that important, right? Now, probably some of these things you guys are very already aware of, right? Data is everywhere these days, proliferation of data sources, proliferation of where it's going, where it's coming from, needing to make sure you manage all of that, right? You know the lineage of your data, you know where it's coming from, you know what security it had applied at its source, you know what security it needs to be applied as it goes through your systems. And of course, the public is aware not only of traditional IT concerns like where's my data and privacy and all those things, but also they're reading the same feed that you're reading, right? They're seeing all these AI stories come up, so they have heightened expectations, but they're also seeing all those high-profile AI failures, anything about a breach caused by AI, like they're all aware of that stuff. So they know what's happening. They have expectations for your usage as well. Obviously, the traditional bad actors, right? Data breaches and cyber threats, we constantly need to be able to guard the boundaries with all this sensitive information, make sure that they don't get in. You have data governance, you have accountability, you have to make sure that you have all those monitoring tools, be able to create the reports that you need when called upon. And then last, again, regulatory change, right? The constantly evolving capabilities. It's good to know when you have a platform that can provide you the baseline needs for regulatory changes, support for compliance standards that you're important in your business. But the fundamental level is also that when you have an enterprise-ready platform, right, that equals speed to market, right? Because it's not about how fast you can build a prototype with AI. We're talking about how fast you can actually get it to your users, to your customers. How fast can you make a business impact with your AI? Now I want to talk about a number of the ways that Appian actually supports all those different aspects within our platform. And we've talked about mixed autonomy before. We've talked about humans and AI working together in the same process. And here's just another example, right? Maybe we're doing classifying documents with AI. This could be an Appian process model, right? You could have your own version of this and you control where you want to route straight through processing with no human review versus where you want humans to look at it. Maybe you want humans to always look at it, right? That's your decision. You can control it. You can configure your process model to combine AI and humans in any way that you want, depending on the use case, depending on the risk, depending on the data, depending on what your customers' expectations are. You can decide to route it based on confidence. You can decide to route it based on business validation. Any tools that you have within the Appian platform can be used when you mix and match AI and humans. It's a great way to maintain that oversight. And maybe you can grow as you get more mature, as you get more confident in the solution. You can kind of twist that dial towards more straight-through process automation, right? Now, auditing, right? Let's say you put that process into production, and now you want to know, hey, what's happening? Well, first and foremost, at the design time, when you build with AI and Appian, you might be building an AI skill. It's an actual design object, right? It has there's a thing that you can go point to and say, that's my AI in Appian. When you use that in a process model, you have traceability of every place that that AI skill is used. Every process model that uses it can be traced directly back in Appian. When you go and execute those process models, every one of those executions is tracked. And every step in those executions is tracked. So you can dig into the individual executions, you can see where AI was used, you can see the other data associated with that process, you can trace it all the way from start to finish. So you know where AI is used, you know when it's used, you know all the details that you need. Now, of course, regulations and standards constantly evolving. Matt talked extensively about the EU AI Act. And he actually related it to GDPR, which I think is really appropriate because we know that for both GDPR and the EU AI Act, no provider can answer the question on our own, right? It's always going to be a partnership between us and you. The things that you build are going to impact your regulatory requirements, but knowing that you have a base platform in Appian that has the tools necessary to meet that compliance requirement is what's going to still allow you to operate with confidence and speed. And I put a whole other list of obvious regulations and standards here, and the one at the bottom I highlighted just because, again, we're talking about how regulations are changing constantly, and the AI assurance platform, I think, was announced just over a month ago, right? I mean, so it's like now there's a new tool, maybe a new set of obligations, new things that we need to be aware of, and you guys need to be aware of if you're working in that space. So that's going to keep happening, right? As we move, especially with the AI Act, right? We're moving from it being approved into the implementation timeline. All those things are going to continue to change, and we're going to be learning together but Appian is going to be here to support you, right? We have a commitment to make sure that our platform meets these as much as we can to minimize your burden of regulatory compliance. And of course, we also have our Appian private AI promise, right? We will not, the data that you give to us, we don't share to anyone else, right? It stays inside your Appian cloud boundary. You can do whatever you want with it within that boundary, but we will never take it out of that boundary. When you train a model, we're not using that data to train our models, and we're not taking the models that you train and allowing any other customers to use it. So that data is yours, the models are yours. If you choose to delete it, you choose to do something else with it, data is always in your control. So this is our commitment to make sure that you guys can go and proceed with confidence, knowing that your data is yours and we're not going to do anything with it. Now, I talked earlier about availability and scalability. With our just announced 24.4 release, we've expanded both in EMEA as well as globally all of the AI services that are available. So London, Paris, and Ireland have gotten significant increases. Almost all of our AI features with private AI are now available in all 3 of those regions. Frankfurt still has everything. You can always choose to move data, and if you want, you can do cross-region support there, but we are committed to making sure that all of our features are rolled out globally. You can see some of the other locations if you do business, or if you have an Appian instance in any of these other regions, we also have great support across the world. Okay, so that's a quick tour of kind of that surrounding layer, right? The enterprise layer, the thing that can give you confidence and speed from Appian's platform. Now let's dive in and look at some of the specific features. What are you going to be building within that? What can you use, the tools that you can have inside your applications? And when I think about how Appian uses AI, right, I really split it into 3 different categories. The first one is AI skills, right? And when you think AI skills, think process automation, right? You're taking tasks that maybe used to be done by a human, and we're trying to automate them as much as possible. So automating those process tasks with AI agents using AI skills. And then we have AI Copilot, right? So AI Copilot applied to business users. This is now for the end users of your application. We saw some of the examples, and I'm going to be showing them, like Data Fabric, tapping into that, being able to help your users get their job done. So whatever application you're building, whatever process you're building, Copilot for business users allows your users of that application to move more quickly and effectively. And then AI Copilot for developers applies that same concept to your developers, right? To supercharge low-code development so you can get more applications even faster with higher quality. So let's start with the AI skills, and I want to drill in and start with a quick customer story. Here we're doing, Appian is being used to do automated invoice processing at a large construction company based in Spain. And as you can see, they work on large infrastructure projects, right? We're talking about bridges and tunnels, highways, things that involve tons of different vendors all working together, right? And everybody wants to get paid, right? If you don't do that, you're not going to get your project finished on time. So finance, invoice, payments, it's all critical to making sure that these projects stay on time and on track. So this company is now using Appian to automate that invoice intake process. So they're extracting all the relevant fields from those scanned invoices. They're routing that into a process flow just like the one we saw earlier. And they're combining that with human oversight. So if there's some validation that fails, or if there's a low confidence, they can always bring a human in to check on the AI. And with that, as you can see, in just the first month, 15,000 invoices processed, right? So all those projects that they're working on, we're now helping them get those payments processed, get their vendors paid faster, make sure that they're paid on time so that everybody stays happy and projects stay on track. Now, in that example, we were using just one of our AI skills, the structured document extraction, but you can see there's a whole host of other things that you can automate, and we continue to expand this list. So things like unstructured document extraction, or document classification, or email classification, any task that you're looking to do, we want to have a skill that allows you to very easily, with a fit-for-purpose experience, go in and help you automate that task, including very flexible ones like Prompt Builder, where you can basically do any Gen AI task that you want. Really, really powerful capabilities that allow you to automate even more and more and more. And integration is super easy, right? It's not API keys, it's not coordination across teams, it's that same low-code developer that built the AI skill going over to the process modeler and just dragging in and dropping. You pick between which type of thing. Am I classifying documents? That's one smart service. Another Prompt Builder, that's another smart service. So all those skills can just be easily dropped in, same security model, all the data security is run through the same security, whoever ran this process or whatever persona is running that task, all the security be handled for you. So that's the unified package, right? That's the way that Appian takes one low-code developer, one security model, one simple drag and drop integration, and then when you're done building, one-click deployment, right? You can export the entire thing as a single package and deploy it all into your upper environments. So it makes it incredibly simple to bring AI into your process and to control it, right? With, again, the oversight from humans right in there if you need to review it, with the decision-making processes that you choose and the decisions that you control, logic that you choose. Now, a couple more stories on what our customers are doing right now with some of our AI skills. In this first example, we have an energy company. Now, they need to keep track of what's going on in the market, right? What are the trends? And they go out and they read all the news articles. But instead of having to manually read tons of different news feeds, tons of different articles, they built very quickly the capability to source those feeds directly, summarize them all with generative AI, and then use the summaries to drive what they want to dig into in more detail. And I'm emphasizing the speed at which they built this, right? You see 30 minutes and you're like, okay, well, that's a prototype, right? But it's not, because all of those grounding of enterprise-grade capabilities in the platform, there's no reason you can't just deploy it. So you can build something in 30 minutes. You can look at the outcome. You can say, that's delivering me value. Now get it out for the rest of my users. Another example, as Matt mentioned, I think many banks, all the leading banks, right? A European bank, they have a case management system that they have built on Appian using records, using data fabric. And they get emails from their customers. They want to be able to attach the email that's coming in to the appropriate case. But as we all know, anybody who's dealing with emails, like, there's a lot of garbage out there, right? Auto responses, spam, and they need to filter that out. So before Appian, they had to do that manually. They had to look at their inbound queue and they had to filter out garbage emails. This is not relevant, not relevant, not relevant. Now they've built a very simple email classification filter, the exact example that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. And just with the first training, just throwing, I think it was 500 emails, 500 sample emails they used, they got 85% reduction in how much of that work they have to do. So their manual workers now can focus on the pertinent emails and not the irrelevant emails 85% of the time. All right, now this last story is a great one. We recently had to go live with a company, Acclaim Autism. Now they're a behavioral healthcare provider that specializes in treating autism spectrum disorder. They struggled, as many do in this industry, with the onboarding time, right? Especially for kids. They have kids that are waiting for care for 3 to 6 months, and this is very common across the industry. So they wanted to make that process faster. They wanted to get people into care faster, and they used Appian to automate their intake process. So they're now getting 95% accuracy on intake document processing. They've reduced their intake time by 80%. They've done that all while complying with all the compliance requirements for patient data. And therefore, they've been able to reduce the wait time down to 30 days. So that's a fantastic outcome for them. It's a fantastic outcome for their patients. And in fact, for existing service areas where they are already working with patients, they've gotten that intake time down to 10 days. So think about the difference between waiting 6 months for care for your child versus waiting only 10 days. And that's the kind of impact that we can have with this kind of process automation. So I love that story. It's fantastic. So that was AI skills, right? Process automation, making sure that you can get tasks that are done by humans out of the loop or speed up your processes, as we saw, like in the example of Acclaim Autism. Now, on the Copilot side, with our Copilot for business users, again, we're trying to make each individual task, we're not taking it out of the hands of the human, but we're trying to make that human, that worker, more efficient, more effective. And in this example, one that I think lots of us can probably relate to in many ways, we have a large university, it's actually the University of South Florida, in Florida in the United States. Now look at the ratio, right? They have 180 academic advisors, and they have 50,000 undergraduate students. So that's why I said I feel like we can relate, right? Like the amount of workload that some of us have, it feels like that's the ratio. Now they already, again, have an existing Appian application, which is a case management system using data fabric. It's pulling together the students' academic history, their course load, their grades, their medical history, all the different facets of that student as the university understands it. They have a case management system that already exposes that with dashboards where you can dig in and go through all of that information. But thinking again about that workload, they don't really have time to go through all that information, right? They have somebody waiting in the hallway for the next meeting. What AI Copilot adds to this is the ability to say, hey, please prep me an agenda for my next meeting with this student. Boom, here's the agenda. based on the history of previous conversations you've had, based on their current course load, based on their current grades. Everything that you need to know is already there in the data fabric. It's just a question of exposing it and making it actionable at speed. After that meeting is over, they can say, here's the notes of the meeting. Please draft me a follow-up email with any action items, right? Again, speeding you up on the intake and speeding you up on on going out so that you can take the next student that's in the hall into the next meeting, right? And it's just constant churn like that. So we talked to them recently. They've been able to reduce the total prep time for every meeting by 15 minutes, which is significant when you think even just for 15,000 undergraduate students, which is what they are required to meet with. That's a huge savings across their 180 advisors. They're saving that much time, and they're delivering better outcomes because their ultimate goal is student success, graduation rates. So they need to have effective meetings with these students, and this is helping them do it better and faster. Now, how are they doing it, right? Again, simple integration, unified package, right? When I'm building a case management dashboard, I've got a record, I'm exposing the record information. There's already a really rich set of information available that I can click through, but by just dragging out that records chat capability, now I've wired that into the entire data fabric associated with this case, and I can chat and ask questions across all of it. When the user is using it, again, you might have some pre-wired questions if there's a common need, but they can ask anything they want. And in a minute, we'll talk, again, it's all secure, right? If you can view that data, you can chat with that data. If you can't view that data, you're not going to be able to chat with that data. Another example, we just talked about it a little bit in the keynote, but in the example for USF, we're talking with a single student's record, right? Now imagine if I wanted to ask questions about all students or about all different records in my organization, right? That's where the data catalog in Data Fabric Insights and our AI Copilot capability come in. So you can look across your entire data catalog, all those data sets that you've connected into Appian. You can ask a question. You don't have to know where the data lives. You don't have to know how to write that query. You just ask the question that you want, like, hey, let's talk about sales. How many opportunities did I win last year in 2023? Right, 511. All right, well, that's too many. I don't know how to dig into that much. So I just want to ask for the top 10. And by the way, give me the name for the contact and their email so that I can actually follow up with them. Now I'm combining opportunity record, customer, like the contact name record, right? The amounts, maybe the amounts are stored separately. Got this list. If I want to see where did all that information coming from, which data sets were involved, what filters, I can verify that it continued to use the context from the 2023 query as I continue that conversation. So you can make sure that what you're getting is accurate. So being able to chat across all the data that you've connected into Appian is an incredibly powerful capability, right? You don't have to build complex dashboards, right? You can just do natural language inquiry and find out the information that you need and go act on it. Now, those are just two examples. Appian AI Copilot has been plastered across so many capabilities, right? We've got individual cases, which we showed. You might want to summarize all the interactions that you've had over the last 2 weeks and get a quick answer. Or across multiple records, data fabric, which customers in France have overdue orders. We also apply it to reports in Data Fabric Insights so that you can look at a report and then ask questions about analysis like, hey, what are the outliers? What can I do to improve the data that's happening here? Or imagine that you have, as we all do, right, policy documents, right? Probably hundreds of pages of policies. Imagine you're onboarding a new employee. How are they going to know all that stuff, right? How are they going to catch up to your experienced employee and their knowledge of all your systems and processes? Well, if you could load those documents into Appian, they can ask natural language questions and get answers sourced directly from those documents. And even when you're doing optimization in Process Insights, you can use AI Copilot to understand how to splice and dice your data so that you can get insights faster. So AI Copilot for business users applied across the entire platform, always helping, speeding people up, being your digital assistant, being the person sitting next to you as you're doing your job to make your job more efficient and more effective. All right, I said it earlier as we were looking at the example of student advising, but imagine another scenario in healthcare, right? You have a doctor, that doctor is authorized to view your patient record. So if they ask Appian for a summary of the recent visits, Data Fabric checks, says, yes, you have access to that information, and AI Copilot delivers you the summary. Now imagine that there's another doctor, they don't have access to your patient record, and because we're sourcing everything directly from Data Fabric, Data Fabric already knows who has access to what. It's not built into the AI model. We're not training it in. We're not losing the control of that security. So when this other doctor who does not have access to the patient's record asks a question, they're denied. They're not going to have access to it. And you can do that on an individual level, but also think about the Data Fabric queries that when we were running it across the entire Data Fabric, every one of those queries is adhering to this model. So you may not have access to data at all. You may not have access to certain rows of data. All of that is baked in when you ask a question, so that we're applying security consistently throughout all of these experiences, no matter where you're accessing it. Now, AI Copilot is also being used by many of our customers, so I just want to give you a couple more examples to maybe spark creativity in your own organization. In the US, we have a state government. They are a public safety organization. Now, in order to, like I said, like when they're onboarding new employees or when they need to be able to converse with the public, they've got thousands of pages of regulations and policy guidance to get their job done. And that's difficult. It's difficult to ramp up on. It's difficult even for an experienced worker to know what's the right thing to say in the right circumstance. So they've loaded all of those policy documents into Appian and use AI Copilot to get the answers, which allows them to save time, obviously, for the employees, but also to get the right answer, to get the better compliance with their regulatory requirements. Now, that same bank that I talked about earlier, they're into AI big time. So they're also using AI Copilot. And in this case, they have a process that helps launch new products, new financial products. And these products can get quite complicated. So again, you have a record, related records, all of the activity about what's happened in that product, all of the different regulations that product has to adhere to, all of the different aspects, all the different facets of a product as it's being launched. How can a stakeholder come in and understand the status, right? How can people working on that product understand what they're missing or what they might need? Well, with AI Copilot dragged out onto that record, they can tap into all of the records, all of the related information that's associated with that particular product and that new launch. They can ask questions. They can ask natural language questions to get updates on status. Whatever it is that they need can be accessed at a fingertip. And now I also highlighted GDPR for this customer because they're all in on AI and they're all in on Appian AI, they've actually streamlined the process of making sure they can get their internal GDPR approvals for all products on Appian, which is just a great example of how with a platform, once you figure out the burden between the platform and the applications that you're building, you can really streamline the process and you don't have to worry about that regulatory burden for every single individual action as you roll out different applications. All right, last quick example here. We have a global accounting and finance provider. Like all of us, right, they have an IT department, they have an HR department. Both of those departments have to handle a lot of questions from employees, right? How do I get a new laptop, blah, blah, all these things. So they've taken a similar approach. They've loaded all of those policy documents into Appian. And now their employees can get self-service answers and the IT and HR departments can focus on getting more work done. So a great boost to their internal teams and to the rest of their employees to be able to get answers faster. All right, so that was a few stories about how we use AI Copilot for business users. Now I want to talk about AI Copilot for developers. And I don't have a specific story here because there's just too many. We actually released several new features in 24.2 just over 6 months ago, and the response has already been really tremendous. These are numbers even from a month ago, and it's grown since then, but 240 different organizations have already leveraged these capabilities, and we've impacted over 22,000 developer experiences. So these are things that affect developers every single day, speeding up your process in large ways, in small ways, at all different points in your development cycle. Now, one of those features really helps improve your quality. Because I know, like, when I did development, right, like testing is nobody's favorite activity, right? You're like, I'm gonna build it and then maybe I'll test it. Well, now you don't have any excuses. When you build an expression rule, don't worry, I'm not actually a developer anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. When you build an expression rule in Appian, you can now automatically generate test cases for it. So AI Copilot for developers will look at your expression rule. It will figure out which edge cases would apply here, which test case should I write, and will automatically provide you a list that includes the test case definition, the assertions that should be applied, all the criteria that you need to simply say add them, right? So no more excuses. Now you're going to have tests across all of your expression logic, which means in the end, you're going to have better regression testing on the next release, you're going to have better quality on this release. It's really a huge boost, and at the top of that, it saves developers time. Now, one of the other great features that we introduced with Copilot for developers helps with usability. It also helps with quality because I don't know, again, maybe I'm just the laziest developer in the world, but when I do testing, it's like test, test, tests, ASDF, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Not the best quality data. Now you can generate real top quality data for your testing by generating information automatically in Appian across your records. And you can not just do it for one record, but also all of its related records. So it'll create all the connections that you need very quickly. So you built an app, go quickly generate some data. Helps with quality, but also imagine how it affects your demos, how it affects the usability, how it affects the appearance of your applications. When you can create sample data and you can tune that data to be specific to your business, to your application, it really makes your applications pop off the page, makes them look fantastic. So, and it's just easy. I mean, you've seen it. It's already gone through 3 times, right? It's super easy to use. You can regenerate until you're content with what you've got. It's a fantastic capability. So you can guys see how it's so powerful and so easy to use some of these capabilities, why so many people are adopting it. All right, so I want to conclude by reviewing everything, right? We've talked about enterprise AI. We've talked about the different categories of AI and how we use them in Appian, whether it's AI skills for process automation and reducing the workload on humans, whether it's Copilot for business users, helping your workers, helping your users get their job done better and more efficiently, or whether it's Copilot for developers and helping them improve quality, improve usability, and take advantage of all the tools that accelerate your delivery. And meanwhile, applying an enterprise checklist to all of those features and all of the things that you're deploying with AI in Appian, right? Making sure that you have data security, simple integration, scalable and available services, the monitoring that you need to meet all of your compliance requirements, and making sure that your data stays private and owned by you. So the entire package, our goal, again, with Appian is to provide you all of the base layer, all of the capabilities, so that when you go to build an application, you can move at speed, right? Remember, we have a deployment in 30 minutes because you have all these capabilities and you're already ready to go. Now, a couple of next steps that I want to highlight. One, if you haven't talked to your account exec or to your CS, customer success manager, we have an offering called an AI Kickstart. It's going to get you, if you don't have license for some of the AI features, it's going to actually provide licenses for those features. It's also going to provide you access with expert guidance, which will help you, if you have a use case, help you flesh out that use case. If you don't have a use case, we can help you identify a use case. And just doubling down on that speed and what enterprise AI can do for time to market, the goal is get you live in 30 days with that use case. So it's really designed to come in, make a fast impact, show you guys what Appian can do, and get you live in production. Now, I mentioned it. If you need any other questions after, please reach out. You got my email address here. Love to talk with any of you about what you're doing. If you're already using the product, and I'd love to hear about your feedback. If you're not yet using it, I'd love to have you or someone from my team work with you guys, maybe through the Kickstart, maybe through some of my product team, find out what we can do with you in Appian. And now, I think that's it for me. I'm going to look at the questions. It looks like we actually have some, so that's great. Let me go through some of these here. All right, we have a question. How do you prepare the workflow for document processing? Do you need some kind of a data model mapping or training on a sample document? Can you please elaborate on that a little bit? Sure. So there's actually a lot of different ways that you can do document processing. They start with the core of an AI skill. Now again, sometimes you might want to do structured document processing, like for a form or for a document that has a couple of different variances, like an invoice. In that case, if you have sample data, you can train a specific model. So I think we need a minimum of 20, but you probably want to have more than that. And you will define, hey, I want this field and this field. These are the fields that I need to extract. When you're using generative AI, you do also have to provide, here's the information that I want to extract, but you don't need the sample data. You can just do zero shot. It'll go and pull all that information out. And that's really good for unstructured information, right? Like where you have either really, really wide variance in your document types, or you have unstructured document types where there's no semblance of a form. And then you can build the flow however you want, right? You can build it to say, I want to do a straight through processing, or I can have the human review. Often we see people starting with, I always want the human to look at it, right? Because, it's a risk-based system. You want to make sure that things are working appropriately before you start to turn that dial towards automation. All right. Are AI services limited to a set pre-built plugin modules, or can self-built prompts be used? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I didn't show anything about plugins. There are plugins available, and there's plugins that you can use to connect to OpenAI or various other services. And we, of course, support that because Appian is best of breed. You can use integrations to any AI provider that you want. Now, the features that I showed are the ones that we've taken the time to embed into the platform, that we've built feature capabilities on top of, right, that take advantage of data fabric and other capabilities. So all of the things that I showed today are just available directly out of the box. And one of the ones that I highlighted earlier in the AI skills category was all of our generative AI capabilities, and one of them in particular, the prompt builder. That's an example of one where you can basically build any prompt that you want. There's controls around it. We have some of our system prompts for protections and certain governance, but you can build whatever prompt that you want, send it in, and we've seen people create amazing things with that capability, right? It's really, the creativity is whatever you can come up with, we can make it happen. All right, is Appian's AI tool only available on cloud, or can any of them be used for on-prem solution? Today, all the features I talked about are cloud only. We are obviously always exploring, and I'd love to hear if you have an example where you want to use them on-premise, maybe understand what kind of hosting provider you're already using. All of that can help us. We are always analyzing that situation, but today, all the availability is cloud only. By the way, if we don't get to everything, again, I can answer these offline. I know it's fantastic, all the questions, and I'd love to continue the conversation. Can we create a new custom AI skill in Appian Cloud utilizing our in-house trained models? So this would be one of those perfect examples where if you've already trained a model, you probably have a way of exposing it, right? So then we would jump as an integration, right? So you can always integrate, you can always make a call to that model, pull that information back in. As much as I do love the fact that we have great, easy to use integrated AI in Appian, we also have a great API integration story. So you can always go that route if you have something that you really want to leverage. Again, try out the in-product capabilities as well. You can always find a mix and match of both depending on the use case. Let's see. If we have existing databases and APIs surfacing the data, do we need to think about a vector store, or can Appian surface and Copilot what we need without a vector store? All right, great, good question. So first of all, existing databases, existing APIs, right? Our data fabric can source information from a relational database. Our data fabric can source information from an API. So you're going to be able to sync all that information into Appian's data fabric, and once there, you don't have to do anything else. There's no vector store. You don't need to worry about any of those other techniques. Everything that we showed is just powered by the features that you saw, right? Once it's in data fabric, you can chat with it. You don't need to do anything else. Follow-up. Is Appian Data Fabric the same as a vector store? How much work do I need to do with my poor data for Appian to give me a value? Good question. Another good question. So Appian Data Fabric itself is not a vector store, but we have added the capabilities that we need in order to power the feature. So again, it's all beneath the hood, and we can go into detail with architecture diagrams, and we often do with many customers. But the point is, you don't really need to worry about those details from a functional perspective. From a capabilities perspective, what you see is what you get in terms of the things that I've showed you today. So you don't need to do anything. You don't need to provide your own vector store or any of those types of things. All right, we got a couple more minutes still. This is great. All right, will all these AI features be available for online training alongside with examples as an AI developer learning path? Really looking forward to developing the skills. Yeah, so everything I've shown, again, if you go to our documentation, you'll find information on them. If you go to our online training, I believe everything that we have is covered. Now, some of this stuff, I think most of this stuff has actually been in the product at least one release, not necessarily new in 24.4. Obviously, we are always releasing new stuff, but we work with our training department. We work with our documentation department to make sure that everything you have here is included. Now, also we look at on the sales side, on the partner side, right? How can you get information on positioning and other things? We have some of that information available too. So if you're a partner or you want to know about that stuff, we can reach out internally. Where is the test data stored? Okay, great. So again, everything that you bring into Appian stays within your Appian cloud compliance boundary. So we do have various different places that we store it, right? I mean, when you're uploading Appian documents, when you're uploading training data for your skill, we use various backend providers. I mean, many of you know we operate on an Amazon Web Services backend, so we're using EBS, we're using S3, but it's all in your account, right? It's all inside that compliance boundary, and it never leaves. It's never commingled with anybody else. We have encryption and all the things in place. So all of it stays within essentially your Appian cloud site. Are Appian capabilities licensed differently for business users or developers? So yes, Everything I showed is available if you're on the advanced tier or the premium tier. AI Copilot for developers is available on the standard tier. Some of our skills are available if you're on an older license from last year or before. So things like the structured document extraction, the document classification, and the email classification, those are available on most of our older licenses. If you have specific license questions, I'd suggest reaching out to your account exec and they can give you an update. We have various ways that you can get access to these, including, as I said, the Kickstart is a great way because it comes with access to both the software features as well as the advice to help use them. But there's various other packages and ways that you can kind of move into a license model that has access to these or everything. Can we extract data from emails having images as an attachment? Yes. So, of course, you can process the email. And when an email comes into Appian, you can actually take the attachments, which might include documents or images, and those are actually modeled as documents in Appian. So now you can actually create separate capabilities. And we did recently introduce, I think this was a 24.4 feature, multimodal capabilities for our prompt builder. So now our generative AI prompt builder can actually look at both the text or it can look at the visuals in that document. So whether it's a PDF that has images embedded in it, and you want to maybe extract the text in those, or you want to interpret what's happening in the picture even, or if it's just an image by itself, right? You can always send that in, and it can either analyze text in the images, or it can tell you more about what's happening. So multimodal capabilities, really powerful, actually just released recently, but available already in 24.4. All right. All right, what are the prerequisites for AI objects? Can it use record types without data sync enabled? Is there a difference for systems hosted in cloud and on-premise? So I addressed the cloud versus on-premise question already. For all of our AI Copilot and the chatting with Data Fabric things, those are all based on the ability to sync the data. And as I mentioned, you can sync data into Data Fabric, whether it's in a relational database or whether it's from an API. There's a variety of ways that you can create connections to all the different systems in your enterprise. Once you have it in Data Fabric, it's available for all those things. For some of the AI skills, you can also just, wherever the data is, right? You're sending it in, you're calling that skill, you can provide the data, whether it came from the user, whether it came from an integration call, however you got that data into the system, you can send it down to the AI skill. It can process it and give you a response. So in some of those cases, it doesn't have to be part of Data Fabric. But I will emphasize, again, Data Fabric is a great way to do it because it provides that built-in security. It provides all the capabilities to make sure that you're not giving access to AI, something that it shouldn't have access to for that user's response. Okay, I think we're actually a little bit over, so I really appreciate it. I will go through and make sure that we can get the rest of these questions answered. I appreciate all of them coming in. I love it. Again, please reach out to me if you have any other questions. Otherwise, thank you guys very much for sitting in, and please enjoy the rest of the day.